Now let's bring in the sliced apple. So let's go back into the Adobe Bridge, and I'll double click on the sliced apple right here and load that into Photoshop. And here's our sliced apple. Now before we use this image, I want you to move this out of the way just for a second and come over to the project image over here, and I want you to make a new layer above the highlights layer. So I'll just make this, and we'll call it sliced apple. There we go. Now what we're going to do is create the shape that will be the shape of the slice, or where the slice is going to be. So we need to decide where the slice will be on the apple using the lasso tool on the toolbar. So come over to the toolbar, select the lasso right here, and I'll zoom into the image just a little bit closer. And so we have to figure out, we can cut the apple down right about there, and then just so we're not on the very edge, but we're cutting off this highlight, so we're beyond the highlight. And so just get an idea on what you're going to do before you do it. That's all I'm saying. So that looks pretty good. And so I'm going to select that lasso once more and start to create this sliced selection. And you don't have to be, you don't have to focus on making it a straight edge, because usually when things are sliced, they're a little rippled around the edges, and so that's fine. And I'm just going to come around here, and I'll probably come up a little bit right where it is right here. And if this is not perfect, don't even worry about it. Later on, you can come back and readjust it, and I'll show you how to do that. So we're just kind of imagining that we've taken the whole side of this apple off with a knife. There we go. Look at that. That looks pretty good. So after we've created a selection, well, easy enough. Let's just go back to the sliced apple image. Now let's copy this sliced apple into memory, and let's paste it inside that selection. So come up here to select all, over here to edit, and down here to copy. Then we no longer need the sliced apple, so we can just go ahead and close that. And so while we're on the sliced apple layer with this selection still activated, let's just come over here to edit and paste into, not paste, paste into, because we're going to paste into this selection. Look at that. Now don't worry about how the edges look right now or anything like that. We're going to go back and fix that later on. But what we can do here is I'm going to zoom out of the image. What we must do is distort and resize this sliced apple, but you can see it will only be inside the area that we've selected here. You see that? So we're going to go ahead and transform this sliced apple image inside this mask that we've created. So I'm going to come up here to edit, transform, and let's scale this down just a touch. And then I'll come up here to edit, transform, and let's select distort right here. Now keep in mind that you'll want to align this middle portion here with the stem coming out of the apple as close as possible, because this hollow area here, this is actually where the stem is coming from, and it goes up from there and then out of the apple. So keep that in mind, and I'm just going to play around with this, and we have to distort this sliced apple so it's going in the same, so it looks like it's going in the same direction and position as our original apple. So it might take a little bit of practice. I'm not perfect with it. I make mistakes too, so I'm just going to drag this over here. I'm going to go ahead and confirm this by pressing the Enter key on the keyboard. There we go. And we can still move this around within the layer mask that was created when we pasted this apple. You can still move this around. All right. And it looks over here on the layer spout, you can clearly see that I screwed up on the video and I made this sliced apple layer, and I didn't really need to because every time that you paste, it creates a new layer. So I actually made a mistake, and that's just the way it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw this sliced layer in the trash that we created, and let's just rename this new layer to sliced apple instead. So I'll just go sliced apple. There we go. Okay, great. After that's activated, I want you to come over to the toolbar and click right here, and I want you to select the healing brush tool. All right. And then what we're going to do is patch up this top portion here right above the pit so we don't see that. But first, let me make sure that the brush is set correctly. You'll want to have the hardness turned all the way down to 0 when you do this, because you want the patch job to be nice and soft around the edges. So it blends in right. Now for the diameter, I can increase that just a little bit higher. And spacing's okay, we don't need to fuss with that, but I'll just go ahead and click outside of that. All right, so hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, and that's the Option key on the Mac. And then you'll get this little eyedropper tool. I want you to click that next to the pit somewhere over here, and then release the key, and then you'll get the brush back, and then just come over here and patch this up. Just like that. And I'll hold down Alt, click up here a little bit higher, and you can see as I paint over the area that I'm going to patch, we can see that the little crosshair follows us. It'll move down and up and down and to the side depending on where we're moving the brush. You see that? So that's really nice. I'm just going to patch this up a little bit. Look at that. Perfect. Okay, let's zoom out and take a look. And I think what I'll do now is touch up the edges of this slice because they're just a little bit sharp. I'll select the sliced apple layer here. I'm going to click on this layer mask, and let me make that just a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on here. I'm just clicking on this layer mask here, the sliced apple layer mask. And then I'm going to select the brush tool, and we're going to paint with white. So just make sure the foreground color is set to white. And I'll turn this diameter down just a touch here. But I think I'll turn the hardness all the way up, because the edge of the slice, if you're slicing something with a knife, it has a very hard edge. So we must turn the hardness all the way up. And then what I'll do is just come in here, and I can paint. And before I do that, I think I will increase, let me go forward here. There we go. I'll increase the opacity of this brush to 100%. It will still, the brush was still set at 60% from when we were using it previously. So we'll have to set that back to 100% and then come back through here and touch up these edges. Now, if we go too far, I can change this to black if our selection was a little bit off, and I can paint the mask back in. Watch this. You see that? Just in case it looks like it's running off the apple here, which we don't want to happen. We want to see the very bottom of that. And the sliced part is just, it's just optional. That's why I wanted to go ahead and create the shadow and everything like that and leave the slice for last. Because this is just, it's just an optional part here. So, well, that looks pretty good.